Howdy guys, welcome back to Front End Hero. Apologies for the delay in getting more videos up. This year has been quite busy with work, but I have a few more tutorials written. I just need to edit them and start recording. So if this is, or if you're finding these interesting and of value, please subscribe, and I'll be releasing a lot more in the coming weeks and months. So today what I want to do is create this little overlay menu, sleek little navigation, and nothing too complex about it really, but I just want to show you the process of how I created it. And if I go down to viewport size, it just tidies up things for mobile users a little bit. So without further ado, let's dig in. Okay, so here's our stripped web page, and we're going to be using 3 different libraries to achieve the transitions and animations and this type of thing. The first is Transits by a guy called Rico Sta, and this basically achieves some XY transitions, but the library can do a lot more than that, so you should definitely check it out. The Animate.css library from Daniel Eden, and this basically achieves the fade up animation when we open up the menu. And then we've got the Hamburgers, a library by Jonathan Suh. He has a lot of different effects here for opening your hamburger menu, but I've gone with the collapse effects. It's just nice and nifty. So let's pop into our editor and create our overlay menu. So we're just going to create a div and call it overlay-menu. So this will cover the height and width of the viewport. And inside we want to constrain all the content with a wrapper. So I already have a wrapper called wrapper, and I think it's around 900 pixels in width, something like that. So we're going to pop in our navigation list first, nav, and give it a ID of primary nav. Nice and simple. Then we'll just create an unordered list and create some list items. Copy and paste these guys. So we've got a home, we've got an about page, what am I doing? We've got a portfolio, a blog, and a contact section. So let's see what this looks like at the moment. Still uploading, bear with. Okay. So our overlay menu is just after the body tag, so it's first. We just want to see that our markup is there. Everything looks okay. So next up we'll create our address, and we'll just create a paragraph tag with an ID of address. And the last part is the contact details. So inside this div here, we'll just create some paragraph tags. And the first up is our telephone number. So we'll add this as a link. So if somebody is on mobile, they can actually click it, so a bit more user friendly. Yep, looks good. And then we'll create our email address. So instead of tell, we'll create mail to. Okay, so let's see what that looks like at the moment. Yep, so we've got all our details here. Next up, we just need to style it. So we're going to pop into our CSS and create our overlay menu ID. And give it a background of dark blue, which is this color here. So let's see what that looks like at the moment. Yep. So we need to make this full width and full height. So we'll give it values of 100%. And we'll give it a position of fixed. So if when this menu is open and the user tries to scroll, the menu will still be in full view. Yep, but obviously it's conflicting with the body text. So what we need to do is give it a value of a z index of 100, and then this will be the first in the stack. Yep. Okay. So now we need to move the content down a bit. So we're going to push it up with a padding attribute, and we're going to give it a value of 145 pixels. So basically that's just below the header, which we'll see now in a few when the header is in full view. So now we are going to style the navigation. So target all of the list items, nav, and now we're going to give them a size of 40 pixels. 40, not 400. Okay, cool. Now we're getting somewhere. We're going to give it a margin of 15 pixels, just to give it a bit of breathing room. Oh, we need to give it a display value of inline block because it's currently set to inline by default. Yeah, it's starting to look a little bit better. Now we need to give it some padding, each individual link, because we're going to be adding a hover background color in a second. And we're going to give it a value of 10 pixels, then 15 pixels at the sides. So let's see how that looks now. Okay. Ooh. Actually, it should be 15 pixels to the side. Let's see how that is now. Okie dokie. And now when we hover over the navigation items, we're going to make it pink. Like so. Yep. So at the moment, all the text is pink and gray. We want to make it all white. So what we're going to do is just create a wildcard. Everything inside the menu will be white. Let's see how that looks now. Yep, looks better. Actually 40 pixels. Let's say 36. Okay. Now there's an issue here with the padding on the address and the contact details. So we'll just pop in here, and what we can do, because these are paragraph tags, we can just globally or create a wildcard for these inside the overlay menu and give it a padding. So we can say padding of 15 pixels at the sides. So now everything lines up nice and neat. Still a little bit of an issue here at the bottom. So what we'll do is target contact detail paragraphs, and give it a margin of maybe 5 pixels, because currently it's set to 15, which is a bit too much. Yep, that looks pretty good. Nice and neat. Maybe I'll just give this a margin bottom of 10 pixels. 15 is probably a bit too much, I think. Yeah, looks better. Okay, so now that's the guts of the menu. Pretty basic at the moment. So what we're going to do for the moment is hide the menu by giving it an opacity value of 0. But if we have a look at the page, it's actually still obstructing the body text. So what we need to do is give it a visibility value of hidden. So now when we try and select text, it's perfectly selectable, but the menu is still there. It's just excuse me, it's just hidden. So now we're going to add in our hamburger icon in the header, which is just right here. So we're going to give it a class of hamburger, and we're using the collapse Hamburger. We're using the collapse, how do you say, the effect. So that's collapse, and then inside that is the I think it's a box, Hamburger box, div class. And the final part is the inner section. So Hamburger inner. That looks good, I think. Hamburger. Okay, let's see how that looks now. Yep. So we just need to align this to the right hand side. So if we create a hamburger rule and we just float it to the right. Oh, it's actually not in the wrapper, is it? Nope. So that's out of the wrapper view. So if we pop it in there, it will be constrained to the width of the wrapper. Okie dokie. So we have our menu created. We have our hamburger icon. So now we just need to add an action. When we click the hamburger icon, we open up the menu. So let's pop into our script.js. And what we're going to do is create some variables. The first up is the overlay menu. That is ID of overlay menu. Second up, we need a hamburger. Okay, so now, excuse me. So now we need to select, so we've got a primary nav. We need these guys. These will animate independently. So we'll address and then contact details. So we need to target all these guys here. So if we create another few variables for the primary list items, we'll call it primary nav list item, and we target the primary nav each list item. Then we target the address, and then we target the contact details. Okay, so we have our main variables created. Now we need to add some interaction with the hamburger menu. So we're going to target the hamburger, add a click handler. So when we click this hamburger icon, what we're going to do is basically just check if it's active or not active. So click hamburger, and then we're going to say if this, which is the hamburger icon, has a class of is active, which is from that hamburger library. So when it's active, it actually animates and does all that cool animation effect. So if it has a class of is active, what am I missing? Okay, so excuse me. So if this hamburger icon has a class of is active, it's been opened, or else it has not been opened, which it has not. So it's a fresh click. So we're going to jump straight into the else statement. So what we're going to do is simply add this hamburger and give it a class of active or is active. Yep. So let's see what that looks like now. So here is the hamburger here. So if we click the icon now it has a class of is active, and we get this nice transition. If we click it again, nothing happens. So what we need to do is change the class, or remove the class when we click it again. So we change from add class to remove class to close the menu and revert the icon. So click to open, is active, close, remove the class, back to normal. Yeah. So then we need to, let me see. What we need to do is actually open the overlay menu. So we're going to add a class to the overlay, and we're going to add it to the else statement because it's not been opened. And we're going to add a class of just active. And now when this is clicked, the overlay menu has a new class of active. So that means we need to pop into our CSS again, and we need to create a new state. So overlay menu dot active, and now we're going to give it an opacity of 1. So basically that will show then. So let's have a look and see what happens now actually. So we need to change nothing happens because we need to change the visibility property to visible. And now if we check it again, yep, it's not exactly very sleek, but it works. Now we just need to add some nice transition. So what we need to do is pop into overlay menu, and we need to overlay menu, active. Once it's active, we need to give it a few extra properties. So we need to give it a transition, and make the opacity open in about 0.8 seconds maybe. Yeah, I think that's, oh no colon, yeah. And we'll give it a prefix too of the WebKit prefix. Transition opacity 0.8 seconds. So let's see how that looks now. So hopefully this should be smooth. Yep, looks good. Getting there. Now the next thing I think we should tackle is the header. So at the moment, once we overlay the menu just completely fills the screen. So everything underneath that, the header included, is hidden. So what we need to do is figure out a way to still kind of show the header. Maybe we'll change the background, maybe hide the background color, and then just show the icons. So what we'll do is if we pop back into our scripts.js, in the else statement, we're going to we'll create a new variable called body. And in the else statement, we will add a class body, not body, and class. Okay, I cannot spell today. Of overlay. So when this class is included in the body tag, the overlay is open. So here's the body tag here. I click open. The body tag now has a class of overlay. So that means now once we know this, the body tag has a class of overlay, we can change a few other different things. So what I'm probably going to do is go into the style.css and target the header. So after Hamburger, we're going to create body.overlay and then target the header, which is header primary hyphen header, which is there, and we're going to give it a background of none. Now this still shouldn't actually do anything, but you'll see in a minute why I've done this. So header primary hyphen header, we click open, and now this guy here, yeah, so it's linking up fine and the background is none, but obviously we still can't see anything at the moment. So what we need to do, pop back into our style.css and change the header just a little bit. So what we need to do is give it a position first of fixed, and give it a Z index of 100. Let's see what that does at the moment. Okay, so we need to work on the CSS, but at the moment it's working. So the header, it's on a level playing field with the overlay menu. So we just need to, because it's fixed, we need to make it full width. So we'll create it at 100%, and the wrapper will constrain it to the proper size, the proper width. So okay, we're getting there. Now the problem is the header is a fixed width. So if we untick this box here, it's working with the flow of the document. If we change it to position of fixed, it takes it out of the flow of the document. So what we need to do now is change the the main area and bring this down a bit. So pop back into our style.css, target the main area, and give it a padding, maybe a margin. Yeah, give it a margin top of 135 pixels. I think that's about right. So we also need to float it to give it a layout. Yep. And then give it a width of 100 pixels. And the wrapper should bring it back in line. Cool. Maybe give it a bit more margin, I think. Okay, so we're getting somewhere now. So this is looking okay, but now the problem is here. This icon here is still the same color as when we clicked it on the lighter background. So we need to change this when this guy, when the hamburger it has a class of is active. So what we need to do is pop into the hamburger and change all of the inner bits when this has a class of is active. That's not right. That is right. So we have is active dot hamburger inner. And let me just show you something real quick. When you inspect this hamburger menu, you'll see it has a few pseudo elements before and after. So these are the lines. So what we need to do is target these guys here. So we have inner. We need the before and after then. Pseudo elements. And then after. So basically, once the hamburger menu is active, we're adding a dark background to the page. We need to change this color to something more light. So we're just going to change it to white. And now when we refresh and reload the menu, it does nothing. Let me see. Hamburger inner. It is active. Color. Oh, it's not a color. It's a background color. Yeah, that should work. Okay. Okie dokie. So then, and then when we close it, it goes back to the normal state. So now I think we're in a pretty good shape. We're gonna close the menu. So we're gonna get that part working of the if else statement in the script.js file. Excuse me. So now what we need to do is get rid of the overlay tag from the body and remove class.overlay. And then we need to hide the what do we need to do? We need to remove the class of active on the overlay menu. So we will remove this here. Now let's see that let's see if that works now. Click to open, close to close. Click to open and close. Yep. But what we should do is create a function. Let me see. We can use the set timeout function in JavaScript to make the delay of the overlay menu that like maybe give it like 0.5 seconds of delay instead of like instantaneous. So what we'll do is just create a function called hide overlay. And what we'll do is take this little snippet here and add it in here. Get rid of this as well. So this function can basically serve a few different parts. So hide overlay will get rid of the remove class on the body tag. And then what we can even do is get rid of the hamburger. We can leave that for the moment, actually it's not too bad. Okay, so we can do this. So hide overlay, we now have a function that will close the overlay menu, and we will pop it in here. In a set timeout function. And we will give it, pass in the function, hide overlay, and make it half a second, 500 milliseconds. I think that's right. So let's refresh and see what happens. So opens fine and closes fine. So the delay is working. Now we just need to animate it out a bit, make it a bit more smoother. Let me see. So what we need to do, pop into our style.css and fix a little bug. I think that should actually be on the main overlay menu ID. Yeah. Okay. Right, so now we're going to begin adding some animation to the menu items. So what we're going to do is create another function in our script.js. So basically what we want to do is once we open up the menu, we want these guys to kind of fade up a bit. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 parts to animate. So we're going to create a function called animate in overlay items. So first up, we're going to animate the primary nav items. So this is where the animate.css library comes in. We're going to add a class or a few classes of, first up, animated, and then whatever flavor you'd like to animate in, which I'm using fade up. So we're going to grab this function here, and then what we're going to do is go to our else statements and animate these. So add in this function here, and let's see what we got. So click, yep. But the problem is, hang on. So the problem is they all animate together. So what we need to do is change that in a little bit. But first off, we're going to just finish adding in the other navigation items. So we're going to copy and paste this for the other sections. So instead of primary nav again, we're going to add the address and the contact details. If we refresh the page again, everything fades up, which looks okay, but I think it's better if they all kind of, they're all independent. Just looks a bit more fluid. So we'll change that via the CSS. Pop in here and we'll go to our primary nav, which is here, and we will target each individual nav item. So the first up is the list item. So we will target the nth child, which is number 1, and we'll give it an animation delay of 100 milliseconds. I think that is right. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so you can see that's independent now from the other items. So we just need to do this for each item. So the second item, third, fourth, and fifth, and we'll just increment it by 100 milliseconds. Yep, and then the last 2 items here. So contact details. Give it an animation delay of 600 milliseconds. And final one is the contact, sorry, the address should be 600 milliseconds. This will be 700 milliseconds. So this will be the address. Change that to 600. So that should be all of them. Refresh. Yeah. That's looking pretty good, even if I do say so myself. Now what we need to do, because these items have still have a class attached to them, we need to remove these classes basically to bring everything back. So when the user opens up the menu again and again, it will still fade up. So we need to go into our script. And we need to go into remove class. So we need to go into our, when we click, if the menu is active, we need to remove, because you're closing the menu, we need to remove these classes. Okay, so what we're going to do is copy these guys here and pop them in here, and just remove the classes when we're closing the menu. Fade up, close, fade up. And the last piece of the animation puzzle is to fade these guys out off the screen. So left, left, left once we close the menu. And then we're nearly there. So in scripts, what we're going to do is create a new function called Animate Out overlay items. And now we are going to be using the transit library. So same again, we're going to be targeting the primary nav list item, and we're going to add, if it equals, this is different than the CSS. Let me see. This is different than the CSS. Nth child start at 1. index start at 1. In JavaScript, equals begins at 0. So it's the same thing, just off by 1. So the first navigation item, we're going to now add the transition effect and some values. So the X value, we want to move it left, which is minus 450 pixels, and give it a delay of 80 milliseconds. So let's see how that looks at the moment. Oh, copy and paste too much. So let's see if that works. And we close, and it does nothing. Awesome. So primary nav li is the first item. Oh, of course, we need to actually, so we have the function, it should work, but we do need to add this to our code, because right now it's not actually executing. So once we can add this in here. Yeah, actually add in at the bottom. So let's see if that works now. Fade in, slide out, just the first one though. Now we need to do the rest. So 0, first, well, second, third, fourth, and fifth. 0, 1, 2, 3, 3, and 4, which is the fifth and final element. So now let's have a peek. So open up the menu, fade up, close the menu, fade out. Yep. And again. Yep. See now, when we do it again, they just they all just are hidden straight away after the second time we click the close button. So what we need to do, those menu items have actually just moved off screen. What we need to do is add another transition and bring them back to their original point. So if we add another transition, another chain, and we bring the X value to 0, we give the delay maybe 500 milliseconds. And we do that for all of the rest of the nav items. So let's have a peek there. Yep, that's looking pretty good. Okay, so now we just need to stagger the sliding out options. So the first one is 80. We're going to create the second value as 160 and go from there. So 240, what's it, 300, 320, 24, 32, and then 400. So now this will stagger the sliding out animation. So click to open, click to close. Yep. And again. Okay, so now we just need to add the last two pieces, which is the address and the contact details. Don't need any equals there. So give it value of 480 and contact details is the last one, and make it 540, 560. Yeah, we just need to probably change the timeout to be a little bit longer. But I think we're getting there. Okay, so now what we need to do is inspect our code. Hamburger.remove. So if we have a look here, set timeout for the overlay, say to be 1 second, see how this looks. Yeah, that probably looks a bit better. Gives it time for the full menu to slide out. Maybe a bit long, maybe 800 seconds or milliseconds. Yeah, that's about right. So we do need this to fade out a bit better though. So if I change this, if I add this back in, let's see if that does anything. Nope. So we need to create the menu, make it a little bit more sleeker when we close the menu. So let me see. Animate in overlay items. Hide overlay, overlay.remove class active, body.remove class overlay. Hamburger. I'm going to actually add this to our function, to our hide overlay function. Create hamburger, remove class active. So that will just give it a little bit of a delay. It won't close straight away. There'll be a bit of a delay to it because the background is still dark. So now that we open and we close, yeah, it's a bit sharp. Okay, so now let me see, we got a bit of an issue here though. When we're on a, say, mobile screen device, what we're going to do is create some smaller fonts to make it a bit more responsive. So we're going to pop into our style.css and create some media queries. So we're going to create add media for the screen and give it a max width of, say, 500 pixels. So let's start there. And we're going to, let me see. First of all, the header I think is too big. So we're going to target the header, which is a primary header. And we're going to give it a padding of 15 pixels high and 0 left or right. So once the screen goes to less than 500 pixels, the header will, like so, will be narrower. So now we need to play with this hamburger a little bit. And give it a padding, because it's forcing the header down a bit. Give it a padding of 15 pixels, top, 0 left and right, and then just 15 to the left. Yeah, wait, up, right, down. Hamburger. Up, down. Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, that's it's better. So mobile and desktop. So now on mobile again, we need to change this area here, which is the main area ID. So we will pop in here and give it a margin of maybe, let's try 90 pixels. Yep, that looks good. And then the content area is probably a bit too far away from, let me see, wrapper. Well, let's change the heading 1 now. And let's see. Just little things for mobile. When you're actually on, you'll notice these things when you're actually using a website on your mobile device. Just when fonts are way too big and they don't exactly, there's just too much. Like, there's not enough space for big headings and stuff like that. It just looks too crowded. So we're going to change the heading when we go into quote unquote mobile view, which is roughly around 500 pixels, I think. From my personal experience, that's what I tend to do. We're going to change the font to 28 pixels and change the line height as well to about 32 pixels. Yeah, so that looks better. And then give it a margin of probably, currently now it's 25 pixels. So we'll give it a margin of 15 pixels. And let's see how that looks. Yeah, maybe 10 pixels, because we got the line height as well adding to it. Yeah, that looks good. Now we need to change the font size of the navigation items. So in our little 500 pixel media query here, what we're going to do is target the primary nav, the link, and give it a font size of 28 pixels. Margin, actually I think the margin should be okay. Let's see how that looks at the moment. Yeah, no, the margin probably needs a bit of work. So that is currently set to 10 pixels. Let's say 5 pixels. Yeah, that's better. I think that's okay. And then let's give the paragraph tags, let's make them a little bit smaller too. Overlay menu P, and give it a font size of 16 pixels maybe. Again, these are just small little amends, but I do think you notice them when you're actually on a mobile device. They just look a bit cleaner. That's looking pretty good. Now we do actually probably need to bring this menu up a bit, I think, because it's currently now set to where is it? Padding top 145 pixels. So let's change that. It's just there's too much space around here. So we will target our overlay menu and give it a padding top of say 90 pixels. So let's see how that looks now. Yeah, that's better. So we've got a fair bit of space now to play with at the bottom. I think that looks pretty good. Yep. So I think that's about it. We move back again to desktop. And we go back to mobile. Just small little updates, but mobile device users will thank you, I think. Okay, so that's about it. Thank you very much for watching. As I say, please subscribe if you found this useful. I'm planning a lot more videos in the coming weeks and months, so definitely check these out when they're available. You will be notified when you subscribe. But thanks so much, and I'll see you in the next video.